Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very, very special, I almost feel like I have to say three varies because everything's special, but a truly special episode of Locked On Seminoles. We are joined by an honored guest, Ingram Smith of the Nolecast. If you know Florida State, you know the Nolecast. Ingram, welcome. Thank you for being with us. How you doing over there?
What's up, man? Yeah, always appreciate the invite and happy to join you here in a bye week and excited to talk a little Florida State football. Probably a little bit more positive tone that would have existed in our voice and eyes in weeks prior. So appreciate the invite and look forward to it.
Absolutely, man. And it's funny, actually, just like how one game can have such a bearing on our moods week to week, right? Like, it's one more win, right? But this is a very different tone than after Jacksonville State. I mean, that was horrible. And what we're going to do today is, look, guys, we got a bye week in the middle of the season, so we're going to do kind of a half-season review. We had Ingram on for the state of the FS Union over the summer, talk about where the team was. We're going to do that for where we are at the halfway point. So how much did that North Carolina win impact your feelings going into the bye week? Like, was it a total rinse from the Jacksonville State game, or, now that we've had a few days to chew on it, are you feeling a little like, okay, that was nice, but we're still a 2-win team?
Yeah, so we certainly still are a 2-win team. I think the level in which you beat North Carolina, you didn't just beat them. You really absolutely beat the hell out of them, which is certainly different than last year. The bigger thing that I've struggled with is kind of to figure out where North Carolina is exactly. I mean, that's a strange team. It is not a carbon copy of what happened up in Chapel Hill last weekend, but the Georgia Tech game was somewhat similar to that. I mean, Georgia Tech, they jump out on top of, kind of convince themselves that this is going to be a fairly easy game, and then really kind of get run out of the building. They periodically scored to cut it down to 11 or something like that. And whereas the difference in the Georgia Tech and the Florida State games for North Carolina is Georgia Tech kind of scored a late touchdown, which added to the score. UNC scored a late touchdown, which made the score look a little bit more respectable. So yep. I'm having a hard time putting my finger on exactly what they are as a program, and as such, not getting too high over this, but it's certainly, a validation of some of the things that you hear in a positive tone when you talk about there still being a decent infrastructure and foundation of a program when the team's 1-3, 1-4. Seeing a team come out and put in as thorough a performance like that, and a team that really, look, to have all the transfers and really all the transfers that you gotten over the last 2 years, seems like a team that really cares about each other. I mean, they get excited for each other and they push each other. And there's some, I think the foundation, the guts of the project are still in decent shape. It's just how much did you F yourself with that Jacksonville State game? How much did you poison pill what this recruiting class would be? So you'll just have to see, how deep of a trauma that is, and if you can kind of get back on board with the Nigel Kellys, Jones Juniors, all the absolute top of the wish list when it comes to recruiting. But for a team that's 2-4, I feel kind of strangely optimistic at the midway point here.
Yeah, man. In the words of the great, James Jimbo Fisher, we're the best 4-loss team in the country right now. So I'd bet that every day of the week. Seriously though, I think it's interesting to kind of look at the last 3 games and how that's such a microcosm of the now maybe overquoted, but no Bobby quote is ever overquoted, right? You lose small, you win big. Like, we literally did that in 3 games, right? We fight hard against Louisville. They could, what were they down 30-7? They could have just said, okay, this is going to be another 52-7. We'll mail it in. Syracuse, they eke out a win on a field goal, and it's like, that stadium probably celebrated a bit too hard, but I haven't seen a celebration like that in years. Like, you would have thought we had just won an ACC championship. I mean, it was nuts. People were just so excited to see a win. and then we go to Chapel Hill and just beat on them. And you wonder, like, are you worried about going into the second half of the season, starting with UMass, of like having a relapse into that, okay, this is really a double bye, and them not being fully ready to dive into what is a much meatier part of the schedule?
I think having Clemson there helps. I mean, you've got despite what they've looked like this year, every person on that roster knows what Clemson, the program, is, and most of the roster knows what it's like to get their ass beat by Clemson. So I think that helps to have kind of an attention grabber there after another win. But I don't think that, to quote previously, John James Fisher, as you said, is like, you remember that North Carolina game that they came back and like Ponder threw a 97-yard pass to Rod Owens and all that stuff, and it's such a beautiful second half. And Fisher's like, here it is. We don't ever go back. This is the standard. Blah blah. I don't think Florida State has found this, permanent level that it's going to stay at. I think it's a nice positive trajectory, and they'll ebb and flow some. And I still like the overall trajectory of the program, but I don't think you found some panacea where everything's been cured and you're in great shape and you're going to win 5 of your next 7 games or something like that either. I think there's still some very legitimate flaws and tough spots on this roster. And all of this optimism is built around a kid who I have long thought was probably your best option, but is, has some health issues and has sustained some injuries in the past in Jordan. So, I don't want to get too far over my skis and wild optimism, but I like what you saw. And again, it's all pinned on. So we'll say UNC is a decent team and not an absolute train wreck.
Are you going to take much away from them against Miami, or do you think UNC?
I think you'll be able to find something. It may be the battle of who wants to quit less in that game, but Again, say UNC's decent. Let's just say that they do win 5 of their next 7 games or something like that. The things that you were good at, absent the defensive line that you're going to have to address in the portal, but the things that you were good at, you can project it really being able to do next year. And maybe you add some really exciting ingredients. Maybe you've got an offense that's able to lean on 2 really fun backs and offensive line that almost entirely returns. And then tell me that you don't get excited about scheming up some shot plays for the kid from Louisiana, who I think will be back on campus eventually, and Travis Hunter and some of these other, I think you can be pretty decent on offense next year. Gibbons if he chooses to use that extra year, Gibbons has been better than I thought he would have been. Obviously getting Smith back at center is a big deal. Bavion would move on, RIP Bavion and his 11 years in the program career, so far. Yeah, I think he signed back in 13 or something like that. But yeah, you've got all the other pieces. I really love what Scott is and what you got at left tackle. And I think there's a lot to be excited about if you can just, put together whatever. I don't know, Max, is it beating UMass? Is it beating one of those other random clumping of teams, and then Miami? I think Miami will be, if you can have Miami be your 5th win, that would be massive. And I think you could have as wild an environment as you could ever have for a 4-win team for that game. I think you got a fan base that's ready to end kind of a BS loss streak over them and remind a program who had their little window that they did absolutely nothing with it. And now they'll have to go back and build back. So I think, I do think you'll get a chance to have a lot more positive momentum and excitement for a program that's maybe wins 4 or 5 games than we ever could have imagined had that been the hypothetical at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I said yesterday, just this team, you're going to have to watch the games, because this is a team that I think at the end of the year, no matter how they do, their record isn't going to be the best indicator of who they were, right? If they go out there and they win 5 games, then yeah, the record will indicate, but they're not going to do that. I think you're going to have to watch the games and say, okay, does this team look like they're improving? I also think they need to get to enough wins, and beating Miami would probably do this. I think beating North Carolina already does it, where the coaching staff can feel comfortable going on the trail and taking the blame for Jacksonville State, right? If they scheme up 1 or 2 more good wins, then they can go and say, hey, yeah, we screwed up, should have called it differently, whatever. But look at when we're actually coaching. Look how we did. Versus if you have 2 wins, you don't really want coaching staffs going to Travis Hunter and saying, yeah, we have 2 wins, and also we can't outcoach an FCS coach. So, I don't know. I think all the moves.
I do think that helps. It's just a matter of how long, you gave other programs 4 to 5 weeks of negative recruiting where really you couldn't say anything about it. So again, how deep is that rot from the Jacksonville State game? How deep does that get into your recruiting class? And a kid, it's like watching, I got one mom who's kind of a lefty artist and a dad who's had background in finance and is kind of, as right as they come. And you go and you watch what those people watch on television for 10 or 15 days straight. It's hard not to adapt some type of political, philosophy based off whatever it may be. And my weird analogy here is, you let 10 people call a kid a day and hit him with the same message. It doesn't matter what you tell them as Florida State. Eventually those 10, 12, 14 other people, it just starts to land. The message starts to sink. So they pick up a win against UMass, play Clemson in a more competitive manner than they have done in a long time. The problem is, I think you might have a better shot at beating Clemson than you do NC State. I don't know that that's a great matchup for you. And I think, they're going to be able to throw the ball and kind of similar to what we thought with North Carolina. But I think they'll be able to throw the ball and pick apart some of the real weak spots that you have. So, can you get Miami and maybe a Boston College game that is an interesting one, and then who knows what Florida looks like. So I think there's a decent chance that you win 3 more games, and like I said, you're the most optimistic and excited 5-win team in the country, which is a weird place to be if you're Florida State, but that's just kind of where you are right now.
But yeah, considering where we were, I will take that. And again, you have the thing to fall back on of look how we lost. We're a couple plays away from being a 7-win team. And yeah, I think, look, you beat UMass, you're at 3 wins, and then you got 5 games, and we'll steal from Bud. He likes his expected value charts, and you say you have a 40% chance to win 5 games. Well, that's 2 wins, right? And add 1 more in there, maybe you steal 1. I don't know. But I want to talk about mid-season MVPs in just a second. But first, I got to tell people about our friends at Sweatblock. It's kind of a weird product, but it's actually my favorite. Sweatblock, as y'all hear me talk about, if you're like me and you're kind of just a sweaty dude, and you live in Florida, and it's just hot all the time, get Sweatblock. There's really no other option. Hit the shower on Sunday, use the wipes, you're good for a week. Not as gross when you're walking around, you're not getting all sweaty. They've got creams if you're tired of, your bathroom floor just covered in baby powder. You guys know what I'm talking about. I don't need to go into too much graphic detail here, but you get it, right? So go to sweatblock.com, promo code locked on, and, I don't know, go to just do it. I don't have to convince you. You guys sweat. You hate sweating. Sweatblock stops you from sweating. So yeah, I want to talk about. I want to go into a positive note because we try to find this balance, and y'all are definitely. It was weird hearing how excited Bud was, by the way, the other week because he is. We trust in him to be the anchor of our expectations. Really hold us still in the wind that is flapping when we do something good, but. We're also coming off a huge win, so I don't want to depress the people during a bye week. And let's talk about who are your offensive and defensive and in the trenches MVP of the first half of the season. And
yeah, sure.
Trenches can be offensive or defensive, just trench monster.
I will say that we just kind of both agreed that there was a legitimate path to 5 wins, so I don't want to be labeled with too negative a light here, Max Mooney. But,
that's fair. That's fair.
All right, MVP obviously 11 is 11 absent injury, and obviously all the conversation that we just had about getting 5 wins is absent, some kind of concentration of injuries or an injury to one of your 3 or 4 best players. But in the trenches, number 11, no doubt. I'll probably give it to Gibbons just because he's been out there. Although, Scott, both your tackles have done really well. I'm not saying that they're all Americans or anything like that, but I really like the direction that both of them are headed in. But I will go with Gibbons. Been a really solid player who's been dealing with injuries, and
Sorry to interrupt. That was one more thing I wanted to say that I noticed. I went on Gibbons' Twitter the other day, and he was our unsung hero of the day, and which actually was cool. We got shout out to the Gibbons family. Literally everyone in the Gibbons family like that tweet. Dylan and all three sisters and mom. So thanks, guys. But yeah, he's in an MBA program. So I would think that lends towards him probably thinking at least about coming back next year, right? Because you figure that's probably a 2-year program. It's not like a 1-year, sports management thing. So anyway, that popped into my head the other segment when you mentioned Gibbons maybe coming back, because to me that says, hey, he's thinking 2 years down the road, but maybe he's in a 1-year program. I don't know. Anyway, MVPs.
Yeah, that would be interesting, and I certainly don't know that for sure. I was just kind of throwing that out there myself as far as availability for a second year. So what do we? I gave you the two trenches. So what do you want? Skill?
Just give me offensive and defensive overall.
Yeah. So Corbin's been absurd. I mean, Ward and Corbin have been Sean squared or whatever you want to call them. They've just been amazing. I mean, Corbin is really solid. Strong. He got a lot of that explosiveness back that, sometimes people respond to a pretty nasty leg injury in 1 year, and it still takes some guys 2 years. Doesn't mean that it's over. It just means that they need that extra year. And Corbin, certainly, all the explosiveness that made him an elite recruit. And Ward just has this ability to kind of teleport 18 inches mostly to the right. He loves that kind of dead leg. And guys don't always totally miss, but normally they're just kind of falling off him as he runs by. He'll certainly drill a safety into the ground every once in a while and just leave him for dead. That's not what I'm saying, but he makes guys miss in space, or just kind of makes guys shed tackles, kind of like Ward done. I'm certainly not comparing him to that, but like a small guy who just never really gets teed up on. He's always able to avoid the real kill shot. I kind of stay away from the D-Free comparison because D-Free's lower body is built like few that are out there, and that's hard to make that comparison. But the two running backs have just been absurd, a real blessing, if you want to use such a term for football. Defensive MVP, certainly 11. We'll say if you want like a newcomer or something like that, Kalyn Deloach is everything that kind of a lot of people thought he might be last year. He's turned into a really good player, and it's Kalyn Deloach, and then it's all the other linebackers, unfortunately. But Deloach is really turned into quite the ball player, so credit to him for that.
Yeah, I just, for me, defensively, I try to think of someone other than Jermaine Johnson, but he's just been, that kid, this doesn't happen to a ton of players these days, but it used to happen to a ton of players when we were great. I don't know if people appreciate how freakishly good he is, right? Because he looks amazing out there, but you're like, dude, this kid, compared to what we've had on the end since DeMarcus Walker left, now you have this guy getting in quarterbacks' faces. You're like, where the hell did we find him? And sure enough, we found him backing up the starters at Georgia, which should scare the hell out of you.
Scare you. I mean, Burns would flash, but I feel like, Jermaine's just so much more consistently involved in a game. Burns would run by. I mean, shit, Burns is getting real big paychecks in the NFL based off his burst. It's super elite.
Yep.
But Jermaine is just so consistently involved throughout the game, and, sets the edge well, and has played himself into what really looks like he's got a better chance than not to be a first-round pick. So hats off to that kid, and he's certainly had to work for it. And it is a scary thought that kids are going and sitting in Kirby Smart's office and thinking, hey, I'm right. Coach, I think I need to transfer because I may be a first-round pick, but I'm getting 30% of the snaps at defensive end. But that's what they built over there.
Well, and then honestly, for me, if I had to name it, I'd say defensive MVP is 1, Jermaine Johnson, but 1A is kind of the rest of the D-line, because I know I just spent a minute singing his praises. On the other hand, he almost overshadows these guys who, this year we were coming into it going, okay, we're pretty sure Jermaine Johnson's going to be good, but he's one guy. What is the rest of the trench going to look like? We've had, 4 or 5 guys really step up between Lovett, Thomas, Cooper.
Fabian's, I don't know if he's elite. I probably need to stop short of that, but he's a damn good defensive tackle. I mean, really good. Cooper's playing really well. Gotta love big old Coop's attitude about, if I'm going to chase your ass 35 yards downfield, I'm going to land on you. You better believe that. I love Cooper, man. But no, he's doing great stuff. The emergence of Malcolm Ray. I mean, and then Briggs. Briggs was having a hell of a season, and it's an absolute shame as to what happened to him. So, yeah, the interior, the defensive line, man. I mean, I know there's some in the fan base who are concerned about finding somebody for Odell Haggins or
yep.
Dude's an incredibly good coach. Incredibly good coach. We need to enjoy him for as long as we have him for reasons obvious and maybe not so obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Odell is one of those where, again, this happens all the time at Florida State. We get spoiled. Like, people start, well, we should get rid of Odell. We should do this. It's like, dude, defensive line is a tough position to recruit because it's not sexy. Like, yeah, you're right. You have your
and it's a bag contest. I mean, for the elite ones, it's as sought after a position as there is, and you got to battle the SEC for everybody that's a mid 4-star and above, and that's real tough.
They never run out of money, especially with this NIL. Dude, what is your take? This is a total just off-topic thing, but what's your take now that we've seen 4 months of it on the NIL stuff? Is it playing out kind of how you thought it would, or just what do you think about it?
I think it's going to take a second, but I think depressingly, I think when like Texas A&M and Texas figure out how to do this, we're all going to be playing for second. I mean, I do think that when some of these schools really figure out what to do, and now Florida State's, I'm familiar with some of their efforts, and maybe there's a time in the future where we could talk more about that. But Florida State's got to do what they have to do. They have to reach out to a broad swath of their fan base, and have both boosters big and reach out to the retail fan base. I mean, there's reasons why podcasts like mine and yours and the litany of other ones that are out there exist and are successful is because this has a gigantic fan base. I mean, this has and if you're between the age of 25 and 45, then there's a decent chance that this was the program while you were growing up. And so, they've got to lean on that and just kind of weather the storm. I think Florida State in the long term is going to be in a good position. The school's very healthy, producing a lot of great graduates and a lot of them each year. From a number standpoint, I think the cavalry's coming. You just kind of got to figure out a way to bridge the next 10 or 15 years and, make up for some of these strange demographics that you're still kind of working yourself out of.
Yeah.
And you got to get lucky. I mean, you got to get somebody that loves Florida State like, your listeners do invent a cybersecurity company that sells for $3 billion or something. You've got to find... You've just got to kind of play the numbers game until somebody gets a big enough check to do all the things that are needed for the program. So. Yeah,
dude, I think about that all the time where it's like I can't be the only one, and there's got to be someone positioned to do it. Where it's like if I came into a fair amount of money, I'd kick a decent amount of Florida State because we've already proven like they'll name stuff after us, right? Like, I mean,
in a heartbeat, they'll put your name on things, certainly.
We'll have the Max Moody bathrooms. Like I would do. This is why this is why the good Lord hasn't given me an absurd amount of money because he knows I wouldn't be responsible with it. And not in the sense of like Jordan Belfort irresponsibility, but in the sense of like, they'd be like, oh, what do you want for $3 million? You want a facility? I'm like, no, I want every bathroom.
Yeah.
Just the Max Moody. Why? I'm like, because it's weird and it makes people talk. I don't know. Because that's what I do. Yeah. But as we're sort of drawn to a close, let's look at the rivalry games because I think that's kind of Clemson is Clemson right now, and I think you and I probably think we have a better shot than most people are giving us credit for. But how critical do you think it is on the recruiting trail, especially to beat at least one of our rivals this year and stop the skid of going, what's the opposite of the state champion, right? Like we've been the non-state champ or the state non-champion for 3 years now. So how critical do you think it is that we do that this year?
I think it's important, maybe not vital. I think it would be a significant step forward to beat Miami and putting into that probably a year earlier than most thought you had a chance to do. And like I said earlier, really really stamp that in their mind that they had their little window of opportunity. They had their 5-year run, and they did nothing with it because they're a nothing program in 2021. And, see that recruiting class, well, I was going to say fully dissolved, but I think when you're, ranked 61st in the country or whatever you are, that there's probably not all that much to fall apart. But, knock that out, sign some of these kids that you have a chance. If you can grab Wesley Besank, that would be a big step, and really let Miami know what's going on at the same time. So that's the game that I think you've got a real chance. Florida's I was saying this even in the year previews on the Nolecast, Florida's a strange program in my opinion.
Yep.
Really dysfunctional. Big boosters don't love Mullen at all. People at the university aren't wild about him. It's just a strange, anybody's not trying to take your podcast in the gutter, but anybody whose wife gives Eskimo kisses or whatever, the whole football program or the whole team before the game is just
not Eskimo kisses. It's real, full blown. She is smooching. I mean, it's just
a really strange look. That's a really strange look.
It's
to see a football team line up and rub noses with the coach's wife. Whatever, man. So I think
so painfully unlikable is the hard part.
And he's so over the top, obnoxious, and kind of unauthentically goofy at times, and I don't know. It's a strange place. So I think you got a decent chance of beating Miami. Florida, roster wise, you don't match up well with at all. But if you find a team that's kind of stumbling into it after playing Georgia, getting slapped around, and South Carolina, Samford, Missouri is when I could see that team, sleepwalking, really kind of having a year that's over with, and we'll have to see what comes of it. So, Clemson. I mean, I just have this feeling that Clemson, you've got a better chance than ever, but I also feel like Clemson may be like a get right game for them at the same time. But I think you got a real legitimate chance to beat Miami, and then, maybe the moon shines right and you end up beating Florida in some kind of strange situation as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you beat both of them, we're having a very different conversation in 3 months. If that happens, that's, if I knew I had the bird in the hand and we were going to beat Florida, I'm not sure if I'd want us to beat Miami just because I want Manny Diaz to stay there forever.
If you could keep Manny, I'd be open to seeing whatever was needed. Yeah.
I hate Miami more than Florida, and it would kill me a little, but knowing, like, if he got a 5-year extension after that win, but I think his time's coming to an end. So
the only thing that would be the savior of losing to them, and you're right, if I knew you could grab Florida, then is that it would be great to watch all their YouTube and stuff, all their fan base be like, I can't believe that I'm this depressed and bummed out about beating Florida State, because I know what it means. We're gonna have this guy running around, not recruiting, not doing anything. He's gonna be our head coach for another year or two. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that's a weird situation, man. That is, but I don't want to talk about Manny Diaz. We're gonna end on a positive note. We are going to do the Ingram Smith Most Improved Award. Can you give me a unit and then give me a player? That most improved is kind of a weird, like, which unit and which player have either come out of nowhere or exceeded your expectations the most? Well, give me someone that was on the roster too, because it's like, the transfers, they all kind of came out of nowhere. Like someone that's really surprised you.
Yeah, Deloach has certainly. I know that was the answer I gave previously. I will say that I had pretty much written off Jerry Jones. I mean, I was surprised to see the game that he had against UNC. Good for that kid. Not just the interception in general. Also, when I was at the Maryland game, that kid looked like he had a catcher's mitt taped to his hand on his right hand. So I wasn't sure. I didn't think he would be back a week later. I'll put it that way. So he's he's doing better and continues to work, and good for him. I'll be really excited to see what 26 blossoms into eventually. I mean, I think that is a really, I don't know that he has like true world-class speed, but I think Knowles could be an incredibly good college cornerback. That's another one of the new ones. And I'm long-term think that could be a lot of fun to see what that kid projects as.
Yeah, Sidney Williams at safety's mine. He's one of those kids, maybe it's the dreads coming out of the bottom of the helmet, but you just see him, you kind of notice, like, man, I'm seeing that kid hit a lot of people, and he's really... If he
can hit you, he thumps. He definitely thumps.
Not who you put in a cover one, late in the game.
No, not who you want to cover one. You don't want him, and you don't... again, it's a 50-50 proposition. If he's attacking the ball carrier, he's either going to thump or he's probably just going to miss. But no, he's been exciting to watch develop, certainly.
Yeah, man. So, hey, man, we appreciate you swinging by. We love having you on the program. Guys, if you haven't listened to the Nolecast, I don't think you'd listen to us if you haven't listened to the Nolecast, but make sure you go check out the Nolecast at Ingram Smith. He is Ingram Smith. I'm Max, and this was Locked On Seminoles.